Imagine you're in a high-stakes situation, a mugging, a hunting accident, or worse. Bullet is fired from a handgun, say a 9mm parabellum round, traveling at around 200 feet per second. That's over 800 miles per hour. Physics tells us kinetic energy is 1/2 mass times velocity squared, so even a small 115-grain bullet packs about 350 foot-pounds of energy on impact. That's like a sledgehammer swung by a pro athlete, but concentrated into a tiny point. When the bullet hits your skin, the first sensation is a hyperlocalized pressure wave. Your epidermis and dermis, the outer layers of skin, offer minimal resistance. Ballistics experts describe this as hydrostatic shock, where the bullet's immense speed creates a temporary cavity in the tissue. The skin doesn't just pierce, it stretches and ruptures explosively. Physiologically, your nociceptors, specialized pain receptors in the skin, fire off signals at lightning speed via A-delta fibers, the fast-conducting nerves that transmit sharp, immediate pain. It feels like a red-hot poker stabbing you, but amplified, a burning, tearing agony that radiates outward in milliseconds. But here's where it gets interesting, and why some survivors say it didn't hurt at first. Adrenaline surges from your adrenal glands, triggered by the sympathetic nervous system. This fight-or-flight response floods your bloodstream with epinephrine, numbing pain temporarily through endorphin release and vasoconstriction, which reduces blood flow to the injury site. It's evolution's way of keeping you alive long enough to escape. So, initially, it might feel like a heavy thud or a sting, not full-blown torment. However, as the adrenaline peaks and fades, usually within seconds to minutes, the real pain crashes in like a tidal wave. Now, the bullet travels inside. Depending on the angle, caliber, and your body's position, it might enter the torso at, say, the abdomen or chest. Let's assume a center mass shot to the chest, a common scenario in self-defense or combat. The bullet doesn't just drill a neat hole, ballistics reveals a dual wound channel. First, the permanent cavity, a narrow tract where tissue is crushed and lacerated directly by the bullet's path. For a full metal jacket round, this might be 0.35 inches wide, slicing through muscle fibers, blood vessels, and possibly organs like the liver or intestines. But the real devastation comes from the temporary cavity. As the bullet yaws, tumbles end over end due to its spin from rifling grooves in the barrel, it transfers energy radially. Physics of fluid dynamics kicks in. Your body is 60% water, so tissues behave like a semi-fluid medium. The bullet creates a shockwave, expanding a cavity up to 10 to 15 times its diameter, stretching and tearing everything in a 6 to 8 inch radius. This is temporary, lasting microseconds to milliseconds before collapsing, but the damage is done. Nerves shredded, capillaries burst, creating internal hemorrhaging. Anatomically, if the bullet hits the lungs, it punctures alveoli, tiny air sacs responsible for oxygen exchange. Air and blood mix, forming a pneumothorax or hemothorax, where the chest cavity fills with air or blood, collapsing the lung. Physiology responds with rapid, shallow breathing as your diaphragm and intercostal muscles strain against the pressure. Pain here is visceral, mediated by C fibers, a deep throbbing ache that builds as inflammation sets in, releasing prostaglandins and cytokines that sensitize nerves. Deeper still, if the bullet reaches the heart or major arteries like the aorta, it's catastrophic. The heart's myocardium, thick muscular walls, might stop a bullet momentarily, but the kinetic energy causes cardiac tamponade. Blood fills the pericardial sac, compressing the heart and preventing it from pumping. Your physiology goes into shock. Hypovolemic from blood loss or cardiogenic from heart trauma. Blood pressure plummets, organs starve for oxygen, and lactic acid builds up, causing a burning fatigue that feels like your whole body is on fire from the inside. Why does blood sometimes come out of the mouth? It's not always from the bullet directly hitting the mouth or throat. Scientifically, this is hemoptysis, coughing up blood, often from pulmonary injury. If the bullet lacerates lung tissue or bronchi, blood floods the airways. Your cough reflex, triggered by irritant receptors in the respiratory tract, forces it up. But more insidiously, internal bleeding from ruptured vessels can backflow into the esophagus or trachea via hydrostatic pressure gradients. Physics of fluid flow. Blood seeks the path of least resistance, bubbling up through the mouth as you gasp for air. In severe cases like aortic rupture, massive internal hemorrhage leads to aspiration, blood inhaled into the lungs, turning your mouth into a frothy red fountain. It's a grim sign of exsanguination, where you're losing up to a liter of blood per minute, leading to hypovolemic shock. How does it feel throughout? Let's be brutally descriptive, step by step. Second 0, impact, sharp sting like a wasp on steroids, but localized. Your brain's somatosensory cortex registers it as hot pressure. Seconds 1 to 5. As the bullet passes, a wave of nausea hits from vagus nerve stimulation, your body's parasympathetic response to trauma. It feels like your gut twisting while your chest burns. If nerves are severed, you might lose sensation distally, creating a numb void amid the pain. Minutes 1 to 5. Adrenaline wanes and the pain intensifies. It's a symphony of hurts, superficial burning from the entry wound as raw exposure to air and clothing fibers embedding like shrapnel. Deeper muscular pain from torn fibers feels like the worst Charlie horse, cramping and unrelenting. Organ damage adds layers, liver hit, searing abdominal fire as bile leaks and peritoneum inflames. Physiologically, your hypothalamus ramps up cortisol, but pain signals overwhelm the descending inhibitory pathways, making every breath a knife twist. Hours later, if you survive, infection risk skyrockets. Bacteria from skin or gut flora enter the wound, triggering immune response. Fever, swelling, pus. The pain evolves to a pulsating throb from edema, where fluid buildup presses on nerves. Psychologically, it's terror. Endorphins crash, leaving raw vulnerability. Survivors describe it as drowning in fire, a total body assault where time slows and every heartbeat echoes the wound. So how do doctors remove the bullet? Medicine's art and science shine here. First, stabilization in the ER, ABCs, airway, breathing, circulation. If you're coding from blood loss, they pump fluids or blood via IVs to restore volume, using crystalloids like saline to counter hypovolemia per Starling's forces of capillary exchange. Surgery, exploratory laparotomy or thoracotomy, depends on the trajectory, confirmed by CT scans or fast ultrasound, which detects free fluid via acoustic impedance mismatches. Under general anesthesia, propofol and opioids to block pain via mu receptors, surgeons incise along the wound path. Extraction involves forceps or suction, but it's not always straightforward. Physics of lodged bullets. If it hits bone, it ricochets, embedding shards that require piecemeal removal to avoid further vascular damage. Not all bullets are removed. Medicine's tenet is, if it didn't hit anything vital, leave it.